Welcome to a special meeting of the Peabody City Council, Tuesday evening, December 10th, 7 p.m. in the Frank L. Wigan Auditorium. This meeting is televised live on cable channel 9 and is being taped by Peabody Access TV and also being recorded by our City Council stenographer. If there's no objection, I would like to, under suspension of the rules, to move to item K on the agenda. Transfer funds, cable fund expense.
Thank you for taking these transfers. As part of the tax rate setting process, we still have to put these in the website for the state. This first one is to transfer $232,000 from the cable receipts reserved for appropriation to the cable fund expense account to pay the amount we owe PAT.
Hey, Councilor Gravel.
There's no discussion. I move to transfer the receipts reserve cable fund account 2700000330017 in the amount of $232,473.02 to the cable fund expense in the amount of, which is account number 2700000530007 in the amount of $232,473.02. So moved.
Any questions on the motion? Roll call vote.
Councilors Mitsoulas.
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
O'Neill.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Rozignol.
Yes.
Sasslaw. Charis.
Yes.
Gould.
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
Motion carries 10-0, 1 absent.
Next on the agenda, we'll move to item L. Transfer of funds, CPC, open space property conservation restriction, $32,125.
Thank you. This CPC transfer request to go to open space conservation restrictions. Kurt Bell advances here if you have any questions on what this entails.
Good evening, Kurt Bellavance, Community Development Director. Yes, we, as part of the process of purchasing land through community preservation funds, we have to put a conservation restriction on that property. There are several properties that we have acquired through CPC that has not been accomplished. So we're putting those, the list together. We've been going through working with the city solicitors on creating the restrictions, also working with the Community Preservation Committee as well. There's a cost associated with that because we have to have a third party hold that conservation restriction. It entails them basically visiting the property once a year or once every couple of years to make sure that we're not doing anything we're not supposed to be doing. But it's part of the requirement through Community Preservation Committee, and we're just trying to catch up on some of the properties that we had purchased in the past. And so the cost covers title work, attorney's fees, recording fees, as well as the conservation restriction that would go to the third party to do that, which it's the Greenbelt Essex County Land Trust, which would be the third party to hold on to those conservation restrictions. So it's something that we have to do. We're looking for CPC to pay for the funding as part of that land purchase. We're just doing it now rather than a few years back. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the council? Council McGinn.
Mr. President, if there's no questions, I'd advance a motion.
One thing.
Councilor Gravel.
We need to suspend the rules each time for these because these were never presented at a regular meeting for our own rule associated with sending it to finance first. I think it's a good thing to do them tonight, but I want to make sure that Councilman McGinn, that you suspend the rules before you approve the transfer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. On the suggestion of Councilor Gravel, under suspension of the rules, move to receive item L. So moved.
All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote. Council McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move to approve the transfer from CPC Open Space Fund balance account number 270-0000-33021, in an amount of $35,125, to CPC Open Space Property Conservation Restrictions, account number 270-01811-58562-2020-0383, in an amount of $35,125. So moved.
On the motion, roll call vote.
Councilors Mitsoulas.
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
O'Neill.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Rozignol.
Yes.
Sasslaw.
Yes.
Charis.
Yes.
Gould. Gravel.
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
Motion carries 10-0.
We'll move to item M on the agenda. Can I get a motion to receive under suspension of the rules?
Move to receive under suspension of rules.
All in favor, any opposed? It's a vote. Item M, transfer of funds, CPC Preservation of Historic City Building Department documents, $99,650. Mr. Gingrich.
Yeah, the CPC request is for the building department to take some historic records and scan them and make them permanent. And I'll tell Rico's here if there are any questions.
Any questions from the council? Council Melville.
Thank you, Mr. President. Is this for like public or is this internal? I'm just curious. I just went through this doing something.
We are going to scan the documents. It's going to be held internally. The reason why we want to do it internally through a hard drive, and we're going to create some DVDs also, which we're going to probably leave with the city clerk's office and the historical commission. But the reason why we want to keep it internal is online security reasons. We're able to email, scan, or duplicate those documents from our office.
Through the chair. Is this just the Historical Society? Is this all the building documents?
This is going to be, so we house about 400,000 documents, 6,000 rolled plans. Anybody that's been in our office has seen that enormous wall of plans that we have. So the plan is to take all the files, everything that we have, and they're going to pick it up, bring it to their facility, sort it, remove all like paper clips and staples, scan them, put them on a hard drive, return them to City Hall, and we'll be able to preserve them that way.
Thank you.
Councilor Gravel.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea because the product itself, the paper, is degrading all the time, and if you have them scanned somewhere, you at least have retrieval of them in event of a fire, a flood, or anything else. I would only suggest that don't waste your money on a DVD because within 2 years there will be no DVD technology left. You won't be able to retrieve from that kind of device. So if you could get them on both a hard drive, an external hard drive, and keep one copy in the cloud. The city has a Microsoft Office account. It's an old 365 account. You get roughly 2 terabytes of storage for free as a result of that. I don't know how many terabytes of data you'll have, but it would be easy enough to keep a cloud base. So now you have a perpetual backed up. It'll be backed up on a regular basis as well as a hard drive, which gives you two safety factors and mitigation against any risk.
The reason for the DVD to have a legacy product instead of having it on the cloud, or it's through certain standards that the state has, these gold DVDs that the vendor is going to be supplying us, even though we're going to have it on hard drive and eventually probably put it on the cloud, eventually we even have it accessible through our online system. That's the next step. But the DVDs are something that can last, has been tested to last a lot longer. Whether there is going to be, any, devices that'll be able to accommodate those DVDs, I don't know that, but the standard that is set through the state is to have those DVDs just as a backup or precautionary.
Well, I can tell you, I do know that, and that there will be no DVD technology available. As a matter of fact, right now, one of the common complaints that people have is that, first of all, every device you buy, whether you buy a desktop device or a laptop device, does not come with a DVD anymore as
Yep.
a standard. You have to order it as a special. They're very difficult to get. And even in the age of the DVD, so if you put it on a DVD technology today, the encoding that goes into that DVD, if it's not maintained by a manufacturer over a long period of time, it can't be retrieved. So you have literally no data that you can look at. So I understand doing it, I guess, for the state to make sure that you appease them, but for your own sake and for the sake of the city, please have a external hard drive and a cloud-based, that way it's being backed up and it's retrievable at any time, because the file itself will always be retrievable because of the way it's built, but the device for storage will not always be available. That's my only point. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, there's no argument for me on that. That's fine. But we're still going to have the DVDs.
Counsel McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to Mr. Talrico. Mr. Talrico, we talked about the backup. Did you see the motion from the CPC with the other two conditions on there?
I did, and I was hoping that condition 3 would be eliminated. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make that meeting, so I wasn't able to explain that this is going to be a static system. It's not dynamic, meaning that whatever we scan is going to be, that's it. We're not going to change it. We're not going to update it. We're just storing whatever we have on that hard drive or the DVDs or on the cloud. So we won't be changing it to the point where we need to back it up on a weekly basis.
Thank you. That's not the one I'm concerned with so much, because we've already kind of talked about the backup
Okay.
portion of this. It's the disposition of the original documents that I want to make sure that you're aware of and supportive of.
Yeah.
I mean,
We will consult with.
We don't need to necessarily make that a condition of this transfer, because that gets a little awkward, but I just want to make sure that you're clear on the
Yeah, we are.
request from the CPC, and that you'll support that.
Yeah, we will work in conjunction with the Historical Commission on any disposition of documents. The state requires that we have to hold building permits and plans indefinitely. There is some stipulation regarding, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. There's a limitation on that, but we're not going to get into a habit of destroying anything.
Thank you, Mr. Talrico. Thank you, Mr. President.
With that, Counsel McGinn, would you like to take the motion?
Sure. Move to approve transfer request CPC Historic Preservation account number 270-000033022 in an amount of $99,650 to CPC Preservation of Historic City Buildings Department, City Building Department documents, account number 270-018-11585-63-2020-0384 in an amount of $99,650. So moved.
On the motion, roll call vote.
Councilors Mitsoulas.
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
O'Neill.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Rozignol. Sasla. Charist. Gould. Gravel. Turco. Motion carries 10-0.
Can I get a motion to receive item N and refer to finance for Thursday's meeting?
So moved.
On the motion, all in favor, any opposed? It's a vote. Move to item O on the agenda.
Move to receive on suspension of rules.
Mr. Gingrich.
Thank you. Well, the city received a grant from the Rideshare Transportation Trust for $24,337.73. And we're requesting that the council appropriate these funds for use in Charlie's study. And again, Kurt Bellavance is here and he could speak to it.
Thank you. Mr. Bellavance.
Thank you, Kurt Bellavance, Community Development Director. Each year, whether you choose to participate in Uber or Lyft, those who do, there's an origination fee from the community in which you're located. So anyone who gets into an Uber or Lyft in the city of Peabody, there's an assessment I believe it's about 10 cents that goes to the state, which then is channeled to the city in which that originates. So right now, for this fiscal year, we have approximately $24,000. Those funds have to be spent on transportation-related item, and we report back to the state to let them know what we'd be using that money for. So it was my hope that the city would use that towards the continuing examination of the trolley and the trolley study, and seeing if it's further examine what we could do in regards to making that connection from downtown Peabody to the Salem train station. That's probably one of our top priorities, and trying to move people from the city over to the train station and vice versa. So it's something that we're looking at, and we've been looking at for several years now. We just want to use that funding towards that. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Council Sasslaw.
Thank you. Just curiosity, Kurt, were there any other items that you thought about besides this? I know this is kind of, timing is everything. This just is in the paper probably this past week. But was there any other items at all that you had thought about possibly where you might want to use these funds?
Well, I'm just one department head, so obviously I thought about what I could spend the money on. I can't say what other departments what we're looking to do. Some of the items that we were looking at, I had a staff meeting and asked the people in the office. We looked at possibly a bike study, like an inventory of our bike network. We looked at possibly using the money towards the bike path and using something to possibly continue the study of the bike path. I believe we looked at a bus shelter, spending some money on a bus shelter. So those are some of the items that we looked at.
Okay.
And if I could add to that, Councilor, last year we utilized the money to buy some of those digital billboard signs, speed mile per hour signs. So that's what we utilized the money from last year, was to purchase some of those.
Okay. And actually, I just had, while you're there, Mr. Mayor, I had a question. I've learned a little bit lately in the last year, a little bit about stoplights, and I never knew that there are stoplights that are sometimes older, stoplights that are newer as far as the technology that's available, as far as counting like right turn on red and having the traffic flow and things like that. And I'm not proposing it for this year, but is that something where possibly these funds, because obviously it'll be perpetual, what this fund will be next year, is that something where we could maybe look at if we wanted to update certain stoplights to help move traffic flow through the city that we could look at?
I think that's a great suggestion, and I would think that would fit in to the criteria. So yeah, let's hold that one for next year. I think that's actually a very good suggestion and could help, and I would think absolutely that would fit into the criteria for use of for these funds.
Thank you.
Council Melville.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, it makes total sense as somebody that used to take the commuter rail, the trolley idea is, it is difficult. The parking situation down there is not necessarily easy to accommodate right now at the Salem train station. One thing I would just suggest next year with this, as it is revolving, is to look at something that I know some cities are working on with regards to Uber, Lyft pickup spots, sites, central location with our restaurants, and having a location that's well lit and off the thoroughfare. I know it is something that I used to work in the same building as the Uber headquarters for New England, and they are promoting some of that just out of safety for the smoothness of traffic flow. That, you know, some people that are using ride sharing, sometimes the vehicle stops in the middle of the street and people have to go out. If it's bad weather or cold, or if it's late at night, it can be difficult. So I think, you know, those are the people paying this. So if we could maybe look at accommodating some of that next year, I'm not, you know, criticizing this year, but maybe next year, I think we could get some bang for our buck out of that. So thank you.
That's something that we've been looking at that already, so just to let you know.
And if no other questions from the council, I just had a quick question. So we're not transferring the money anywhere, we're just leaving it there and kind of earmarking it for this, but do we have an estimate as to what the total cost of the surveying engineering may cost? And, you know, I've never heard any discussion on the project, so I really don't know anything about it.
Right. Right now, we have an estimate of about $125,000. So it's something that we'd have to make sure that we had other funding available, and we're working on that now to make sure that we could move forward in that next phase of the project.
Thank you, and this is separate from the study from last year that Representative Walsh got the money from the state.
Correct. That gave us some basically preliminary information that now we can use to work forward with using that information.
Thank you very much. Can I get a motion from the floor to, I guess, approve the request to earmark this for...
Move to follow a recommendation of the mayor to utilize Rideshare Transportation Enhancement Trust, account 2500000358535 in the amount of $24,337.73 as requested in the memo, in the letter from the mayor. So moved.
On the motion, roll call vote.
Councilors Mitsoulas. Yes. Melville.
Yes.
O'Neill.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Rozignol.
Yes.
Sasla.
Yes.
Charist. Gould.
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
Motion carries 10-0.
Mr. President, while you're on a roll here, D, E, F, and G and H have no impact on the classification. Would you like to take those under suspension of rules too?
Yeah, we can do that. We might as well clean it up while we can. So we'll move to item D.
I'm just trying to keep the Finance Committee on Thursday short, since it will be my last meeting.
Yes, we could definitely move to item D. Transfers funds CPC administration for $10,000.
Thank you.
Move to
This is
receive
an
on
annual,
suspension of the rules.
sorry. This is an annual funding request from CPC to cover their administrative costs for the year.
Any questions on the motion? Councilor Gravel.
Move on the suspension of rules to receive and transfer amounts from the Community Preservation Act unreserved fund balance, account 270-0000-33011, in the amount of $10,000 to the Community Preservation Act Administrative Fund, account 270-0000-33024, the same amount of $10,000. So moved.
On the motion, roll call vote.
Councilors Mitsoulas. Yes. Melville. O'Neill.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Rozignol.
Yes.
Sasla.
Yes.
Charist.
Yes.
Gould.
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
Motion carries 10-0.
To receive item E on suspension of rules.
All in favor, any opposed to vote? Councilor Gravel. Oh, my apologies. Item E, transfer of funds CPC, various transfers, $1,359,270.98. Mr. Gingrich.
Thank you. This is an annual set-aside from CPC where we take 10% of the prior year revenue and set it aside into historic preservation, community housing, and open space. And then in addition to that, another 10% for open space and 2.5% for historic preservation and community housing. This is a formula we've been using for a number of years. And this is definitely included as part of the tax recap. The total request is $611,000.
Okay, so I didn't have the revised version, so for the council, the amount for item E is $611,672. Councilor Gravel, do you have that?
No, I'll defer that to Councilman McGinn because he's on the CPC committee.
Council McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move to approve the transfer from account number 270-0000-33011, Community Preservation Fund, unreserved, in an amount of $407,781 to the following three accounts: 270-0000-33022 in an amount of, Historical Preservation Reserve Fund, an amount of $135,927, 270-0000-33023, Community Housing Reserve Fund, an amount of $135,927,000, and account number 270-0000-33021, Open Space Reserve Fund, an amount of $135,927. I'm gonna make that motion independently, Mr. President, and then I'll make the second one as a second motion, unless you want me to do it all together.
That's fine, you can make the second motion. On the motion on the floor, roll call vote.
Councilors Mitsoulas.
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
O'Neill.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Rozignol.
Yes.
Sasla.
Yes.
Charis.
Yes.
Gould.
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
Motion carries 10-0.
Mr. President, move to transfer from account 270-0000-33011, Community Preservation Fund, unreserved, an amount of $203,891 to the following three accounts: 270-0000-33021, Open Space Reserve Fund, an amount of $135,927. Account number 270-0000-33022, Historic Preservation Reserve Fund, an amount of $33,982, and account number 270-0000-33023, Community Housing Reserve Fund, an amount of $33,982. So moved.
On the motion, roll call vote.
Councilors Mitsoulas. Melville.
Yes.
O'Neill.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Rozignol.
Yes.
Sasla.
Yes.
Charis.
Yes.
Gould.
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
Motion carries 10-0.
And can I get a motion to receive item F on
On
the
the suspension
suspension?
of rules, move to receive item F.
On the motion, all in favor, any opposed, it's a vote. Item F, transfer of funds reserved for fiscal year 2020 budget, $65,000. Mr. Gingrich.
Thank you. The rest of these motions do affect the tax rate, so I don't know if you wanted to hold off or do them now. This one in particular is for the enterprise fund. In order to fund the budget for the enterprise fund, we need to take $65,000 from reserve, retained earnings, and appropriate it to offset the budget.
Yeah, we could take those transfers now. Any questions on this transfer for the skating rink? Seeing none, Councilor Gravel?
Thank you, Council President. Move to transfer under suspension rules, skating rink retained earning funds from account 430-0000-31101, the amount of $65,000, to reserve for FY 2020 budget, account 430-0000-31102, the amount of $65,000. So moved.
On the motion, roll call vote.
Councilors Mitsoulas.
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
O'Neill.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Rozignol.
Yes.
Sasla.
Yes.
Charis.
Yes.
Gould.
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
Motion carries 10-0.
Can I get a motion to receive under suspension of the rules, item item G?
On the motion, suspend item G. So moved.
All in favor, any opposed, it's a vote. It's transfer of funds fiscal year 2020 Cemetery Department, $100,000. Mr. Gingrich.
Thank you. This is a request to transfer $60,000 from sale lots and graves and $40,000 from cemetery interest account to fund the cemetery department budget of $400,000.
Any questions on the transfer? Councilor Gravel.
Move under suspension of the rules to transfer from cemetery sales of lots and graves, account 270-0000-33006, an amount of $60,000, and from cemetery interest, account 270-0000-33008, an amount of $40,000, and transfer to FY20 Cemetery Department, account number 100-0000-39-201, an amount of $100,000. Also moved.
On the motion, roll call vote.
Councilors Mitsoulas.
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
O'Neill.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Rozignol.
Yes.
Sasla.
Yes.
Charis.
Yes.
Gould.
Yes.
Gravel. Turco.
Yes.
Motion carries 10-0.
Council President, move to receive under suspension of rule item H.
On the motion, all in favor, any opposed, it's a vote. Item H, transfer of funds fiscal year 2020 budget, $21,200. Mr. Gingrich.
This is a vote request to fund the parking meter budget from parking meter revolving revenue of $21,200.
Any questions on the transfer? Counselor Gravel.
Pretty straightforward. On the suspension of rules, move to approve the transfer of parking meter revenue, account 270-0000-33001, in the amount of $21,200 to the FY20 budget, account number 100-0000-39201, in the amount of $21,200. So moved.
On the motion, roll call vote.
Councilors Mitsoulas.
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
O'Neill.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Rozignol.
Yes.
Sasslaw.
Yes.
Charis.
Yes.
Gould.
Yes.
Gravel. Turco.
Yes.
Motion carries 10-0.
Item I.
On suspension of rules, move to receive item I.
All in favor, any opposed? It's a vote. This is a transfer of funds fiscal year 2020 operating budget, tax levy, $250,000. Mr. Gingrich.
Yeah, this is a request to transfer $250,000 from our employer health trust to help fund the health insurance in our operating budget of $250,000.
Any questions on the transfer? Seeing none, roll call vote.
The motion is
my
to
apologies.
receive under suspension of rules a transfer from employer health account 500-32113, the amount of $250,000, and move that to the FY 2020 operating budget for tax levy account number 100-39301, and a similar amount of $250,000. Also moved.
On the motion, roll call vote.
Councilors Mitsoulas.
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
O'Neill.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Rozignol.
Yes.
Sasslaw. Charis.
Yes.
Gould.
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
Motion carries 10-0.
Move to receive item J on the suspension of rules.
All in favor, any opposed? It's a vote. Transfer of funds fiscal year 2020 operating budget, tax levy, $1 million. Mr. Gingrich.
This is a request to take $1 million from unreserved fund balance, free cash, and fund the operating budget for $1 million.
Any questions on the council, Melville?
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Two questions. First is, what will that leave our unreserved cash balance at? A percentage of the total budget, and that's how we usually measure it, correct?
We had our free cash certified at $11,263,000. And you add our stabilization balance to that, it's $2.7 million, so we have roughly $14 million in reserves. We're going to take out $1 million, or leave our free cash at 10.2, 2.7 in stabilization, so we'll have $13 million in reserves.
So that's what, roughly 7%?
So just about 8%.
8%. And what's the impact on the average residential tax bill that transfer will have, based on what's being proposed tonight?
$42.
Okay, thank you.
Council Sasslaw.
Council Melville asked my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion from Councilor Gravel. Any other?
Very succinct, Mike. Move on to suspension of the rules to transfer unreserved fund balance, account 100-35901, the amount of $1 million to the FY 2020 operating budget tax levy, account number 100-39201, the amount of $1 million to save the taxpayers' money. So moved.
On the motion, roll call vote.
Councilors Mitsoulas. Yes. Melville.
Yes.
O'Neill.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Rozignol.
Yes.
Sasslaw.
Yes.
Charis. Gould.
Yes.
Gravel. Turco.
Yes.
Motion carries 10-0.
Okay, we're back to the top. Item A, tax classification hearing to adopt the percentages of the local tax levy to be borne by each class of real and personal property for fiscal year 2020. Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, councilors. My remarks tonight will be very brief, but I'm certainly here to answer any questions that you may have. Before I begin with a few points, I just wanted to recognize and thank. Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Mayor, my apologies. Can I have the clerk read that notice prior to your speaking? Thank you.
Notice is hereby given that the City Council of the City of Peabody will conduct a public hearing on Tuesday evening, December 10th, 2019, at 7 p.m. in the Frank L. Wiggin Auditorium, City Hall, 24 Lowell Street, Peabody, Mass., in accordance with Chapter 797 of the Acts of 1979 as amended of the Massachusetts General Laws in order to adopt the percentages of the local tax levy to be borne by each class of real and personal property for fiscal year 2020. Peabody City Council, Councilor John G. Turco, City Council President.
Thank you. My apologies, Mr. Mayor, you have it.
Well, thank you again, Mr. President, and I will be brief in my remarks, but certainly, as I stated, I'm here to answer any questions you may have. Before I begin, I wanted to thank and recognize those that have worked extremely hard in putting this presentation together. We're very fortunate in the city. We have a very strong, experienced finance team that I think has really been primarily responsible for putting us in a very good financial position compared to other cities and towns. Certainly our finance director, Mike Gingras, our city auditor, Mary Martin. Behind me, we have our assessors, our Sue Antonellis, our city assessor, and Leslie George, our assistant assessor as well. Great deal of work was put into this, and I wanted to thank and recognize their efforts. I just wanted to highlight a few points. Mr. Gingras will be going through the presentation shortly to break things down more in detail, but a few highlights that I wanted to point out. First is in June, when I came forward to present the budget to you, we were estimating that we were looking at about a $213 tax increase. The good news is that because of some increased values in the commercial sector, we're presenting it would be a $194 tax increase, so about a $20 reduction that we were able to lower in the proposed tax increase. Another good piece of news is this is the highest in new growth that we've had as a city, at least in the last decade, probably significantly longer. Nearly 1.4 million in new growth. Primarily from a lot of the projects that's taking place in our city, projects that I think are providing jobs and this additional tax revenue. Our residential values have gone up again considerably, 7.4% this year. Our average home now is just under $422,000. 5 years ago, we were at $303,000 in the average home. So over a 5-year period, our home values have increased 39%, which is pretty amazing. I always do like to state a lot of that has to do with the improved market across the nation and across our state. But there's no question that the investments and the work that we've done here, the City Council administration across our city has paid significant dividends and increased property values here in our city. The one I always like to point out to, it's always been a great source of pride for our city. I think I've spoken about it in the past, but I wanted to reemphasize and state it again. Realtor.com USA Today did a study earlier this year, and we were ranked the 5th hottest real estate market in the entire country. The highest in New England. The city of Peabody, Massachusetts, pretty amazing to think about. And the big stat that I was really excited about is we had the second in the nation, the second lowest amount of time a property was on the market. People were grabbing up houses quickly, and again, I think it's a testament to many things, but a great deal of it is the work that we've done together. We have together, I think, formed a terrific partnership. We've been able to undertake a number of projects that I think have really improved the quality of life for our residents and made this city a better place for our residents to live, work, and raise a family. And all of that work that we've been able to do, and it's been significant, and I'm not going to go through it now in detail, the different projects that we've undertaken, but we've been able to do that work. And right now, for the first time, I think it's been in decades as well, we have the lowest tax bill in Essex County. And I would further add to that I think it's probably one of the lowest in the state of Massachusetts. But for the first time, according to Department of Revenue numbers, our real estate tax bill is the lowest in Essex County, 31 communities. Today, the vote is on the tax classification. We're putting forward a number of 175, which is the highest that we can go when we shift over from residential to commercial. 175 is our highest that we can go, but because I think that we need to do that in order to take some of the burden off our residential taxpayers, and because our home values are extremely high, we think that is the prudent course to take. So I'd be asking for that vote at the conclusion of the presentation. In closing, I want to thank the City Council for being outstanding partners. It's never easy to vote for a tax increase, but I truly believe that we are investing appropriately and conscientiously in Peabody's future. Our investments in education, public safety, and quality of life continue to pay dividends, and we've done it without compromising the affordability that has long been our calling card in achieving the status of the city with the lowest tax bill in Essex County. Together, we have Peabody moving forward in the right direction, and I ask for your support on tonight's votes. And again, I'm here to answer any questions that all of you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gingrich is going to present item C, I believe, to us. Item C, the PowerPoint presentation is. Thank you, Mr. Gingrich.
Move to receive, Mr. President.
All in favor, any opposed, to vote?
Thank you. So this first slide shows the values for this year. 8.4 billion compared to last year at 7.9 billion. That's a 496, almost $500 million increase for a total increase of 6.2%. 7.4% alone is the residential increase, 0.6% in commercial, 4.6% in industrial, and 5.3% in personal. And the thing to note on this slide is that if you look at last year's residential part of the pie, it was 79.8%. Now it's at 80.75%. So the residential values keep climbing in comparison to the commercial values. 5 years ago, that number was 76%. So the commercial share is shrinking, the residential share is increasing. The next slide shows the valuation history from 2015. This top green line shows you the residential value. In the past 5 years, it's gone up $1.9 billion. If you look at the CIP lines below, the yellowish lines, they're relatively flat. In that same 5-year period, that growth is only 138 million. So 93% of that growth is in residential, and 6.7% of the growth is in commercial, industrial, personal. The next slide is a breakout of the residential values. In the single family category, we've increased 7.3%, and that represents 71.1% of all of the residential value. The condominiums have increased 8.6%. They represent 10% of the residential, 10% of the residential value. 2 and 3 families, 6.9% of the increase. They represent 7.9% of the value. The multifamilies are 8.6% of the increase. They represent 9.3% of the total value. And the vacant land and others, 1.6% of the value, to round it out to the whole 7.4% increase. The next slide shows the breakout of the CIP values. And this is where I picked up a little bit from my initial projections in the spring, where I was projecting around 1% growth there. In the industrial, you can see was at $12 million, $12.3 million, went to 4.6%. In personal property, 6.5 million at 5.3%, which really helped. I asked Susan to pull out, some of the significant reasons why there were some increases there. And in the industrial, the warehouse rates increased to account for more current market values. In the personal property, we brought on some utilities, Boston Gas, New England Power, Sprint, Singular Wireless, and Comcast. So there was some help in those areas. And because we had this additional growth in CIP value, it helped reduce a little bit on the residential side. Next slide is our average residential value that the mayor already alluded to, the increases since 2015. This year, we're at $421,800 for the average residential value. That's an increase of $28,000 over the prior year and 7.4% per year on average over the past 5 years. And I just talked with the assessors, and they believe that in January, we're going to see at least another 5 or 6% increase. On the commercial, industrial, personal values, there was an increase this year of 20 million or 20,200 on average. You can see from the chart that last year we had a greater increase, and we've kind of leveled off a little bit. But the good news is we're remaining pretty stable in the commercial industrial area, and we're always adding at least a little to the values. This slide on new growth shows the highlighted line at the bottom in green, where we had $18 million in residential growth, $49 million in commercial growth, for a total growth of $67 million, which rivaled the 2013 in values. And in actual tax dollars, we're at $1.368,000. CIP contributes most of that at $1.1 million and only $200,000 on the residential side. On average, we are looking at $1 million every year in new growth. And these are new tax dollars that get added to our tax rolls. This year's budget came in at $158 million. And if you look at the fiscal 2020 column, the original budget of $154 million, plus the $4 million for Essex Tech is their $158 million budget. State and county assessments at $3.2 million. I've added $400,000 for allowance for abatements. Currently, we have $1.2 million in that fund. We're looking to get it back up to where it had been at about 1.7. We anticipate some negotiations with the North Shore Mall because of their construction. So that's why that request there for $400,000. So we need to raise $162,495,000, and we're going to do that by a property tax levy of $110 million. Local receipts of $20,400,000, state aid at $29.9 million, and we've talked about the available resources already, $1 million from free cash and some funds from other sources. You see that there was a reduction this year from the prior year's budget, and that's mainly due to moving to an enterprise fund. We take out the cost of those departments, and we also take out the revenue generated from them. This next slide looks at the local receipts. And what I've done here is I've mirrored for motor vehicle, hotel, meals tax, most of the line items, what we actually received in the prior fiscal year. And Department of Revenue allows us to go up to that amount. You see that there's no amounts for water and sewer because they're the separate fund. Landfill, we're projecting 1.5 million. We've just reopened the landfill. We've put out some solicitations when we expect to actually exceed that a little bit. But that should be a safe number between now and the end of the year in order to generate those funds. The other highlight is rec revenue. We've increased that a little bit to account for some contributions from Tilly's Farm. License and permits is actually up from the budget from last year, but below the actual because we received right at the end of the year something over 400,000 from the North Shore Mall, and we wouldn't be getting that again. So I've scaled that back to 2.2 million. And we did a little bit better on interest income this year, putting that at 360,000 compared to 145 2 years ago. In the SESD, we've just gone down a little bit because of we have a little bit less available there this year. So the total of revenues from local receipts will be 20,418,000. This next slide just shows you the state aid changes over the past few years. The significant thing that happened this year that you're all aware of is that the state increased our education aid almost $2 million. So when you look at the total for the 2020 budget, it's $29.9 million compared to $29.7 million the prior year. Then I'm showing the change in state charges from 3.1 million to 3.2 million. So we have a net change from year to year, 26.7 million to 24.7 million. So there's $1.9 million increase from year to year in our state aid, which has really helped us maintain a lower tax bill.
Mr. President, just one clarification, Mike, on the, is that last column supposed to be fiscal 20?
It's supposed to be fiscal 20.
Oh, okay,
Sorry.
thanks.
This next slide shows us the impact of classification. Before classification, based on the values as they exist, 80.8% of the value is residential, 19.2% is commercial. That would give a residential levy of 89.4 million and a commercial levy of 21.3 million. With that shift to 175%, the residential levy moves down to 73.4 million, and the commercial levy moves up to 37.3 million. That is a shift of 15.9 million from residential to commercial. So with the impact on the residential tax bill is if we had a equalized rate of $13.08, the tax bill would be $5,517. With classification, the tax rate moves down to $10.74, and the average tax bill goes to $4,530, which is a $987 savings to the residential community. On the CIP side, at an equalized rate, CIP would pay on average $19,981. With the reclassification, that moves up to $34,967. So it's a $14,000, almost $15,000 increase because of classification. And we look at year to year, whatever our percentage shifts is, and we've tried to maintain this 14% shift through classification. This slide looks at our history of tax rates, and from 2015 to now, you can see that the tax rates have gone down just because the values have gone up. It's an inverse relationship. We've gone from $12.30 to this year to $10.74, CIP from $24.30 to $22.89, and that will continue to go down and decline in that way as long as values keep rising. The next slide looks at average homeowner's annual tax bill. This year, the increase, as the mayor talked about, will be $194.55, or 4.49% increase. We've gone to an average tax bill of $4,530.29 at a average home value of $421,800. The next slide is the CIP average value. And this is trying to give you a sense of the changes in CIP, but generally, CIP fluctuates a lot. There's 770 parcels, some as large as the mall, which are in the millions, and other ones that are smaller, like a service station, that would be in the hundreds of thousands. But this tries to give us an average of how it's changing. And you can see that with the tax rate at $22.89, even though we've moved through classification the full 175%, the average tax bill is going to decrease $743 from $35,700 to $34,966. The next chart kind of shows the breakout of where the tax bills will fall this year. 55.9, almost 56%, will see a tax increase of $200 or less on the residential side. On the commercial side, even though we did that shift, 94% of the commercial taxpayers will see a decrease. A snapshot of Essex County for 2019. When I put this slide together, I only had 3 communities who had set the 2020 tax rate. And as of last year, we were the very lowest on this list for single-family homes at $4,550. And Essex County average was $7,500. So we're $2,000 below, at least, most tax bills. In that case, $3,000. And we have the highest levy reserve, that's untaxed tax levy, that we can tax in the future if we need to. And last year it was 10.4 million. This year it's going to be 12.1 million. So in summary, our assessed values have increased to $8.4 billion. Our allowable tax levy under Proposition 2.5 is $122,800,000. We're only going to tax the actual tax levy of $110,700,000. That would leave us an unreserved levy capacity of $12,113,000. And our residential tax rate will be $10.74, and our commercial tax rate at $22.89.
Thank you. Anybody here in the audience to speak in favor of the tax classification? Anybody here to speak in favor of the classification? Anybody in the audience here to speak in opposition to the classification? Mr. Donovan. Could you please state your name and address for the record?
Certainly. My name is Russell Donovan, 12 Quail Road, South Peabody. For or against, as you guys know, gentlemen know, the budget was set in June, and here we are for tax classification in December. And the bills have to go out by the end of the month. So there is no decision really to be made. You will pass this unanimously. But I would like to go over a couple comments. As the mayor praised the new growth in commercial properties, and Mr. Gingras mentioned there was about $1.2 million of new revenues for the commercial properties. If you look at the budget, and I think it's on page 16 of the slide, if I get it, it's 13 to 16. Actually, the revenue for the commercial properties this year, fiscal 2020, is less than last year by about $700,000, even though we had new revenues of $1.2 million in new growth. What we're doing is giving back to the commercial properties on average $750. So the tax, as Gingras mentioned, they will be getting a decrease. Here we have the best economy going in the country. We're booming. We're expanding at the industrial parks. We have new growth coming through. We have over 1 million new jobs in this country this year. Yet business is doing well, but their values are not going up. They're valued differently than the residential properties. And you see the effects of Prop 2.5 right now, where the commercial properties are being held and getting a tax break. Meanwhile, the residential properties are going up in taxes. Our revenues, and they showed that there was a levy, we can go up another $12 million, and all that will come from residential properties. Residential properties are not income-producing properties except for the city. We are a revenue income property, the single-family homeowner. Right now, the bills will be paid, and the homeowners will pay the bill. The average increase, I know my increase will be about $400, and that's just the fiscal year. The calendar year will be about $600. And I know my revenue stream is my Social Security and my pension check. I will not be going downtown Peabody to those new restaurants that are opening up because I can't afford it. I'm on a limited budget, as many of the people in Peabody are. And we talk about affordability. If you look at over the years, in many city council meetings, we asked the question to the departments, how much of the properties were tax exempt? That was an issue a number of years ago, and I think the percent was about 9%. Those 9% properties don't pay taxes, and the homeowner picks up the tab for that. And we talk about affordable housing, and I'd like the assessor to explain it, but affordable housing are not taxed fully as the single-family homeowner is, because their property values are depressed because of the affordability factor. So they are not paying their fair share or their full burden to the city for taxes. So we have non-exempt, exempt properties of about 9%, and with a percentage of 10% affordability, that's another 10%. So almost 20% of the properties in Peabody don't get taxed. And the homeowner picks up the tab because businesses bring in all the business you want, bring in the traffic, they're not paying into the budget. The homeowner's picking up the tab. So the businesses are doing great in Peabody. They're getting about a $750 tax cut. Meanwhile, the single-family homeowner is probably going to get a $500 tax increase. Is that fair? No. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Donovan. Anybody else in the audience to speak in opposition to the tax classification? Anybody else in the audience to speak in opposition? Seeing none, I'll open it up to the council. Any questions from the council? Councilor Rossignol.
Thank you, Council President. Through you to Mr. Gingrich. Going through this, and thank you very much for this presentation. I appreciate all your hard work. and coming up with the facts and figures here. The one question I have is payment in lieu of taxes. That's only been raised $17,000 since 2016. What is the formula that we have for payment in lieu of taxes? Is there one, or is it, how is that calculated?
There's a number of the different parcels that have different agreements. Susan could speak to it better than I can. But the majority of this money is from the electric light plant, the fee that they pass.
So with all of the nonprofit organizations that we have, whether it's the hospitals, we don't have a set kind of contract that we go by and then negotiate. It's individually based?
They're individual negotiations. I don't know if you want to.
Mr. Mayor.
They're individually based, and because they're tax exempt, they don't have to pay us a dime. We try to negotiate and work with them, and oftentimes what we're able to, particularly from the hospitals, is to get services and some funding to run different programs at our schools. That's typically where it's gone from the hospitals. They've been big supporters of our student health center at the high school, and in fact, we're looking to expand that into the middle school, hopefully very soon, as well as just support staff and support for our school nurses. So a lot of times that doesn't come as actual funds, it's services, and there is some funding that goes directly to those programs that doesn't really show up here.
I think it would be good to see some of that in this, because, I mean, you look at payment in lieu of taxes, and it's, that line item has literally, it grew $300 from last year to this year. So it looks like they're not paying their fair share, when in actuality they are doing other things that don't necessarily show up on a line item. I think it would be a good way to at least show that they're giving back to the community in other ways. So just food for thought. Thank you.
Council Rosner, did you want Ms. Antonellis to address some of those properties, or are you okay?
Thank you, Council President. I have an idea of what they are. My main one was, as the mayor had mentioned, was the hospitals, because I know that that is a large volume of space, and it's good to hear that they are giving back in other ways. So thank you.
Thank you. Council Melville.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. Gingras, can you just, one more time, what was the increase in residential property values overall compared to over last year? 'Cause sometimes, when you give a lot of numbers, sometimes those get lost in there.
7.4%.
7.4%. And that comes out to what, couple hundred million?
470 million.
So, all right. So there's a $470 million increase in the value of the properties, the residential properties in Peabody.
Out of 496.
Yeah. You know, I know this is, comes down to a tax classification, but some of those numbers, they're really significant. I mean, that's an enormous generation of value for the residents of Peabody. And I was at a municipal meeting a couple months ago when they were discussing some of the impacts regarding this education funding bill and some other things that are coming down the line. And, I think one thing to keep in mind, I voted for the budget, and I will vote for funding that budget. But within those budget, I know the mayor gave some credit to the marketplace, and I think that makes sense. But I also think it's having viable city services, school system, transportation, and all of the things that go into those budgets every year that allow those values to happen. Because if you do talk to folks, one reason some people aren't happy in some communities, and they might not see the increases in values, and they might not be a hot residential market, is because cities and towns might have their priorities in other places. So that's a significant number, and I think that's one that we should talk about more often. That's almost $500 million in values for the residents of the city of Peabody. So, all right, thank you very much.
Any other councilors? Council McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to Mr. Gingras. The abatement number, you spoke to it during your presentation, 400,000. You made a comment, something to the effect of you added that in, and I don't necessarily see it as you added that in. I think that was projected in your June numbers, correct, that 400,000?
I think I had 250. I just increased it some. I had 250,000 in June, and I just increased it a little.
Okay, and you explained the rationale with the potential upcoming issue with the mall. You've already kind of answered this question during the presentation. Councilor Melville asked you about kind of backing into the what the ultimate reserve number is going to look like as a percent of the budget, and you came up with about 8%. There's a few things that are probably pending out there that are going to bring that number down a little bit. Historically, snow removal would be a chunk of that, but maybe around $1 million historically we look at that. And often there are others. Can you just kind of touch on that a bit?
I roughly, I would say that to finish off this year, we're going to have snow and ice issues. We're going to probably have some departmental issues with overtime. There may be some potential issues with the school budget. So, and we also are going to be operating a landfill, so we're going to need some appropriation to do some of the management up there. So if you combine all of those items, I could see $1.5 million or $2 million worth of use of reserves in order to accommodate those issues. But, you know, again, it depends on what kind of a winter we have. Even last year when we had a relatively mild winter, we were looking at somewhere over $1 million in snow and ice.
Okay, so that that 8%, $13 million, 8% of the budget number, if you drop that a couple of million, you're now down to 6.5%, 7%. You're kind of getting down into a range where we haven't been before. Would you agree with that?
I definitely agree with that, yeah. We want to try to avoid that. Moody's is going to look at a AA2 community at around 20% in reserves. I've seen the lowest being around 9.9%. So we have to be aware of it, but, we also have to address whatever issues we have as a community.
So, and we don't have to drive that 20% number because, as you pointed out during the presentation, we're getting credit for the excess levy reserve, right? Is that kind of differentiates us in the eyes of the bond rating agencies?
Yeah, that's a strong argument we use when we talk to Moody's, and because we have the flexibility to raise taxes, and they give us quite a bit of credit for that, because it's the same rationale that they use to take the wealth communities and make them AAA, because they can go out and raise taxes at will, practically.
Okay. But given what this, rough number is, 2 million maybe ballpark, that would be an argument for not dipping any further into the reserve for the purpose of this setting the tax rate. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would advise that, yes.
If you look at page 10 of the presentation, in the local revenues, the South Essex Sewage District refunds, we've got $450,000 coming back to the city. So that's a refund based on prior period activity, I'm imagining, because now any future activity, that refund would go to the enterprise, to the water and sewer enterprise, is that right?
Yeah, that's a good point. At the end of this year, we have approximately $475,000 of funds available there, so we can appropriate the 450 from them and be secure. But going forward, since we'll be paying the assessment to SESD out of the revolving, any use of the unreserved fund balance at SESD should revert to the revolving fund or for projects related to water or sewer.
So that, I'm just trying to think that forward a little bit. Does that potentially creates a little bit of a hole on the operating budget side of the picture, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
On page 11, I think Councilor Melville kind of alluded to this a little bit with respect to the new legislation with the education aid, and maybe the mayor is, I don't know if you're in a better position to answer this at all, Mr. Mayor, but have we seen any, I'm assuming there'll be no impact on fiscal '20, but we might expect there to be an increase in fiscal '21, or do we have any visibility into that at all?
Mr.
No.
Mayor.
No, we don't at this point. I know we have some meetings coming up to review, but no, I'm not prepared to say that just yet.
I didn't think you would be, Mr. Mayor, but it would be nice to get you on record saying we were going to. But I don't want to ask you to look into your crystal ball. So if you go to the last page there, you said you had information for some other communities. I mean, I can see what's been reported in the newspaper. Yeah, this is all last year's information. So for this year, we've seen Beverly, and it looks like that was their average single-family tax bill increased by 2.95%, but that in whole dollars, that's $199. In Salem, it was $87, I believe. That was 1.48%. And I think the comparable number in Peabody, I know you've got it calculated here based on this, on a value that includes condos and two and three families, but this whole chart is based on single family. So I think the Peabody single family number is about $201 on average. So that'd be 4.42%. So a little bit lower percentage wise than the 4.49, just a touch lower. But again, still very much at the bottom of this list, I would anticipate for Essex County, and given the levels of municipal services the city of Peabody is providing, it's hard to argue against this. I think that we've seen in some of these other communities, there for trash pickup and so forth, they're charging fees above and beyond the tax rate and so forth. So that would add incrementally to the cost differential living in Peabody versus living in a neighboring community of similar size in Essex County. So I think it's fully consistent with what you had projected, actually a little bit better than what was projected in June, and my intent is to support it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilor Gravel.
Thank you, Council President, and I voted for the budget, so I'm going to vote for the classification and assessment that goes with it. I only feel that that's fair. We had an opportunity to address this through the budget, and I think every year you have that opportunity. I for one, would kind of wish that the budget time and classification time were actually at the same time, so it didn't confuse people, but it is what it is. So A couple of things to point out, though, in terms of some misconceptions about, commercial property and commercial taxes. And they are misconceptions, and sometimes people listen to sound bites and don't get the whole picture. Commercial entities, really, there are two taxes that they pay. The first tax, I'm sorry, too. The first tax they pay is their commercial property tax, and that's made up of the value of the property, but not just the value of the property, not like a residential where you can say, I'm going to do a market study and compare my house against your house in a similar neighborhood and see what the value is and have somebody come in and do that. But they also get the added perspective of what's the productivity of that property. So if it's fully rented, it has a higher value. If it's not fully rented, it has a lower value. And so that combination is what makes up that commercial assessment. So the only way you can increase that assessment itself would be to have more productivity out of it. So for anybody to think that the economy is booming and therefore everything is fantastic on the commercial side would mean that you'd see a steeper rise in the commercial assessments, which would mean the properties are fully productive and they're earning at the fullest rate and the businesses are doing great, in terms of, that's the only way that assessment goes up, first of all. Secondly, businesses get the added adventure of the personal property tax. So not only are you taxed on the property, but you're taxed on what's inside the property. The furniture, the equipment, the computers, the this, the that, and everything else. And the reporting of that is done on an annual basis, and the assessment is made based on that annual reporting. So it's the combination of the two. And I guess if you look at the numbers, they kind of speak for themselves. From FY17 to FY20, residential property value increased by $1.3 billion, with a B, billion dollars in the city. That's based on comparative information done by the assessors, and they do a good job. They know what the value of the houses are. So that much value has increased in the residential property within the city. And that's not based on just new growth. That's based on the individual values of existing properties that are there. That's a 25% increase from 2017. In most places, that would be considered good news. I mean, that means everything that you own, the house that you live in, obviously is worth more, so therefore it has more value, but it also carries more tax associated with that value. On the commercial side, the increase in the same period, FY17 to FY20, is $113 million. That means it's a 7.4% increase from FY17 to now, which is not really that significant when you think about it, right? And the cautionary tale is that if we don't stay focused on that point, then the burden automatically shifts back to the residential property. We have to keep the commercial entities as productive as possible, get the assessment up as high as it can be so they can pay the taxes associated with it and keep the residential taxes low. I think Mayor Pete, a long time ago, figured out that formula and was a big advocate for, the park, the office park, the industrial park, and other commercial entities in the city that help provide for the lower tax rate that we all realize. To say that, it's a wonderful thing that, commercial entities get a $700 break or whatever it is. Again, we're using averages there. That's not every business, just like not every household will see a $195 increase. Some will see less, and some will receive significantly more, depending on value. But my point is, value is, the assessors provide the value, and we tax against that. the last little misnomer, I mean, and again, it proves itself out in numbers, and numbers are a wonderful thing. So we took in $1,073,000 in new taxes. Forget about the existing, in new taxes. Of that amount, and that was like right in that line, and I credit you, Mike, for doing this, because it's an important number, 73% of all new tax money coming into the city is being driven by commercial entities. 27% is from residential growth, the way we set up. So if you take 73% of the, so on the new value, roughly 25 million in commercial value, that means that 3%, 3 cents on every new value dollar goes to a commercial tax, whereas 0.0006% goes from new value created by residential properties. I don't think that that's overly unfair, and in terms of, you know, thinking that the big bad commercials are making out like bandits here this year. And finally, we always use 175%, 175. First of all, it's 175 of the equalized rate. It's not 1.75 of the classified rate. It's 213% of the classified rate. So when a residential is paying $10 and change, a commercial is paying 213% of that number per thousand of value, not 175%, which means a lot of value is coming out of the commercial entities to offset and subsidize. Again, we as a city decided to do that a long time ago. Some cities don't do that. I think it's appropriate. We're cushioning. I just don't like when I hear that, you know, the commercials aren't paying their fair share or they're getting some type of extra break, because they're not. Actually, they're paying 213% of what the residents pay, and they're taking less services. They don't get trash, as Mr. McGinn pointed out, which if you added that back in, and you know, they don't get plowing. If they're on the private property, they plow their own. Everything is done. They have to do it on their own. So I think you always have to look at numbers like that or statements about one versus the other. I think in total, the only way you could increase, there's only 2 ways for you to increase the commercial assessment in this city at this point in time. First way is to increase the assessed value of the properties, which is driven by the market. So if these assessed values aren't increasing dramatically, the taxes aren't going to increase dramatically for the businesses. The second way is to increase the residential tax, because if you would increase the classified rate of the residents, then the commercial rates go up automatically. We're at the cap. We can only take 175% of the equalized rate. So it's fundamentally not allowed, you know, by law. So those are the only 2 ways that we can do that. But I thank you for doing it this way, because you've protected the residents from a significant increase.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, and Councilor Gravel, thank you. That was extremely well said. To piggyback on that, I did want to address the comments that were made earlier by the gentleman who spoke regarding page 15, the average commercial decreasing $743, excuse me. That's very misleading and left out some very important information that I wanted to make sure all the councilors knew and all the residents understand. The North Shore Mall skews this number dramatically. The North Shore Mall, as you know, is going through a major renovation, is reinventing itself. When we do our assessor's review of the North Shore Mall, it's done on an income-generated review. It's based on the numbers of income that comes in from that property. This year, And we expect next year, those numbers are down because they are closing stores, closing some operations, putting significant money into the property. New restaurants are coming on. We think after this period of time where they're reinventing themselves and refocusing on entertainment and restaurants, that income is going to go up significantly. But right now, their numbers are down from years past just because of the work that's going on, and they shut Sears down and they shut some other properties down. If we took the North Shore Mall out of the equation, that number, 743, would be on the positive side. An issue was brought up of fairness. That's just a very inaccurate statement. The commercial, if you take the North Shore Mall out while they're going through this process of, again, reinventing themselves and investing in the North Shore Mall, if we took them out, the average, every other commercial taxpayer, if we did it that way, there would be an increase in their taxes. The North Shore Mall skews that number, 743. We have to include the North Shore Mall because they're a taxpayer. They are significantly our highest taxpayer in the city. We take them out of the equation, that number would be on a positive side. And I think the fairness between commercial and residential would be very much the same. Thank you.
Any other councilors? Council Sasslaw.
I just had a question, just so we understand. There's one thing regarding the proposed factors, 175%. Is that a, and Council Gravel alluded to it, is that something that is part of our ordinance? In other words, do we always, that's the maximum we can go, or is that, where did that number come from?
That's a state law with the Department of Revenue. The most shift you can do is at 175.
Okay. And then when it comes to commercial entities and they pay their tax bill and then they also tax a second time on personal property, the personal property tax, that's based upon self-reporting of the assets that they have. How does that get arrived at?
Hi, Susan Antonellis, Assessor's Office. Personal property is assessed based on the form of ownership of the business, and it would be charged their inventory, potentially machinery, equipment, furnitures, and fixtures. And every January, we mail them out what is called a form of list to all the businesses that we have on record for them to report what they have for new items or to remove any items they've since disposed of. And in addition to that, self-reporting, we do go and look at a sampling of businesses. Every 10 years, we do have to go to attempt to get into every business, but we don't do that every year. We only do that once every 10 years to verify that information.
So it's self-reporting kind of honor system, and then
Yes.
you do back it up. Okay,
Yes.
I understand. Thank you. So I appreciate Council Gravel's and other councils' questions. I learn a lot through the process every year. You know, and I respect what we came through. I did not vote for the budget. The two numbers that, you know, and you have to be careful with a soundbite, but, you know, if I'm a homeowner sitting at home, and I did hear 94% of commercial entities see a decrease, you know, it's a number. Numbers don't lie. And, you know, and by living in the North Shore and growing up, I've always been proud of the fact that I say to people, you know, because of this industry, our tax bills are reasonable compared to other cities and towns in the area. But, you know, that would certainly strike me if I read that in the paper tomorrow morning, that 94% of commercial businesses are going to see a decrease. I also know that the average was 194, which is better than 213. 55% of homeowners are going to see an increase of $150 or more. So, you know, I do like what I see here. I did have one other question regarding the Sewage Ethics Commission that Councilor McGinn brought up earlier. When we went down $50,000, I believe it was from 500,000 to 450,000. Looking for that. SCSD refunds. Mike, so that money is going to be now going to the enterprise? Is it gradually going to be going to the enterprise? Is that what I had heard earlier, or is it gonna, how's that going to work?
Yeah, what this is it's the available funds, the city share of available funds at the SESD at the end of the fiscal year. Currently, there's approximately 475,000. So I'm using 450,000 of that to apply to this year's budget. Going forward, and during this current fiscal year, the assessments to SESD are being paid from the enterprise. So in order to utilize the funds back from SESD, the enterprise should benefit from it.
So the enterprise will benefit from it, but the general fund will see those funds dwindle over time?
This is the last year that we would be using it.
So we'll have to make that up.
Correct.
So, that's a little bit of a concern, and from if I understood what you said, Mr. Mayor, correctly, and I totally understand, if I understood you correctly, probably we'll be in a little bit more of a difficult situation with the mall next year, but then hopefully it'll turn around because then they'll get back up to occupancy in probably 2021 or 2022.
Yeah, I think this was expected, certainly with Sears closure, not only Sears, but also Sears Auto, a couple of other restaurants closed. And I certainly just think in general the construction that's taking place there has had an effect on some of the numbers. So this was expected by the mall, expected on our end by our finance team. I do think that it's probably going to be one more year of that as the construction continues, as they're building Lifetime Fitness. You add Lifetime Fitness into the mix, those new restaurants that are coming in that I'm told are doing well. Hop and Grind just opened up. I know there's plans for a couple of others, a bowling alley. So I think there's going to be a great deal of construction. I think at the end, the revenue is going to go up, hopefully significantly. But in this year, next year, we're kind of in that period where there's some adjustment going on that we have to account for.
Sure. And I see good things. I know Tesla's pretty much getting ready to open up shortly, and then I believe there's a bank on the 114 side that we certainly see the building going up. So I think we still have to be careful for some of those reasons we just discussed going forward, especially next year, and anything I can do to work with the administration, my fellow councilors, to tighten the belt and maybe not fill some positions that are vacant, and maybe we have to let them go for a year or so and look at those things, because as I said, for the reasons that we've outlined in the budget, I think we do need to be careful going forward, but I thank you all for your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor.
Any other councilors? I just had one question, just to Ms. Santinellis. My apologies for making you come all the way up here for this one question, but in regards to Mr. Donovan's statement that affordable housing is somehow taxed differently, I'm not sure what he was referencing, so I won't pretend to ask you that, but I'm assuming he meant just because the value of may be lower, but is there any different tax classification for affordable housing?
No, it would be taxed at the same income approach that non-affordable housing units are as well.
So the affordable housing is taxed
So
residential?
It would be tax residential.
Residential.
Any sort of housing, yes.
Okay, and they're assessed the same as...
Yes, and if they're
we're
paying
all-
lower rents than a non-affordable unit, then their income will be lower. So they would be assessed lower.
Okay, so the affordable housing is taxed at the assessed value of the property and an income approach also?
The value is based on an income approach.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
No further questions from the council. Can I get a motion to receive item 8B? No, excuse me, item B.
Motion to receive item B and to follow the recommendations of the mayor. This is regarding Section 5 of MGL, Chapter 59.
Any questions on that motion? All in favor? Any opposed? Of Councilor McGinn.
Can we get a roll call on that, Mr. President?
On the motion, roll call vote.
Councilors Mitsoulas. Yes. Melville.
Yes.
O'Neill.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Rozignol.
Yes.
Sasslaw.
Yes.
Charist. Gould.
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
Motion carries 10 to nothing.
Can I get a motion to close the public hearing?
Move to close public hearing.
All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote. Councilor Gravel.
Move to vote to approve the following, regarding tax classification. First one is a vote to adopt a residential factor of .821211 for fiscal year 2020 and a 175% CIP. So moved.
On the motion, roll call vote.
Councilors Mitsoulas.
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
O'Neill.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Rozignol.
Yes.
Sasla.
No.
Charist.
Yes.
Gould. Gravel.
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
Motion carries 9 to 1.
I'd like to move I'd like to move a vote not to grant a discount for open space. So moved.
On the motion, roll call vote.
Councilors Mitsoulas.
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
O'Neill.
No.
McGinn.
Yes.
Rozignol.
Yes.
Sasla.
Yes.
Charist.
Yes.
Gould. Gravel. Turco.
Yes.
Motion carries 9 to 1.
Not to adopt a residential exemption. So moved.
On the motion, roll call vote.
Councilors Mitsoulas.
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
O'Neill.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Rozignol.
Yes.
Sasla.
Yes.
Charist.
Yes.
Gould.
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
Motion carries 10 to nothing.
I'd like to move not to adopt a small commercial exemption. So moved.
On the motion, roll call vote.
Councilors Mitsoulas.
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
O'Neill.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Rozignol.
Yes.
Sasla. Charist.
Yes.
Gould.
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
Motion
And
carries.
I'd like to
10
remind all
nothing.
councilors that we need you to sign the classification tax allocation form before you leave.
All right, can I get a motion to close, to adjourn?
Thank you, Council.
Have a good night.